Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 114. And the set looks a little bit different this time. So Gabrielle and I just took a trip up to New Jersey from D.C. because we're going to watch my very own beloved New York Jets tomorrow. And it just so happens, so Gabrielle, born and raised in New Jersey, and this is none other than my father-in-law, Jeff Dunn, but he has a wide variety of martial arts experience. We are at Karate World right here in New Jersey, so we're going to be talking a lot about the school, what running the school looks like, and some of the crazy experiences that you've had as a martial artist, because there's a wide variety of them. As always on the show, we encourage questions. That's the reason we do it live, so feel free for Black Belt Magazine. Drop those questions down below. And once again, thank you to Black Belt Magazine for hosting this podcast, and let's jump right into it. So first, sir, I'll allow you. Give us an introduction. Who is Master Jeff Dunn?
Well, I'm just a guy that fell in love with martial arts when I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. There was a guy named Bruce Tegner, and Bruce Tegner had a paperback book on every martial art imaginable: Savate, Jiu-Jitsu, Karate, Kung Fu, Tai Chi. And I couldn't read, but my mother would go to the bookstores, and I would always get a paperback Bruce Tegner book and look at all the pictures. And so I was very interested in martial arts since I can remember. And then there was the Kung Fu TV series in the 70s that, we were all watching, and watching Kwai Chang Caine defeat all the bad guys. And it just appealed to me to, that I was the youngest of three brothers, so I was always being picked on, and just to have that feeling of being able to protect myself. And at the end of in the old comic books, at the last page, they had Universal, Bruce, Joe Weider, weightlifting, and then they had the karate ads on there. The order for the catalog, you get the free Pressure Point poster. And I waited 3 months for that Pressure Point poster to come in. Every day I was at the mailbox looking, and but back then that was in the 70s, and we were in Texas, and we really couldn't afford martial arts classes. There was only one school in town, and I would call the number, and they'd say Killing Karate School, and I would hang up. Sometimes I'd ask, how much is karate? Have your mom call back. And I think it was only like $15 a month back then or something. And
those were the days, right?
Yeah. So I kept getting no. And finally, when I was in 6th grade, there was a guy named Greg Farmer. I never forget his name. And he said, I take karate at the Boys Club. It's only $2.50 a year to join the Boys Club. I was like, yes. My mom can't say no now. So I went there, and my mom said yes, and started taking me. In the first 3 months of training, I wore my brother's white choir pants. Didn't have a uniform, just wore white choir pants. It was in the back of the boys' club where they parked the school buses, cement floor, garage doors up and down, freezing in the winter, dying in the Texas heat in the summer. And my birthday was 3 months later, and I finally got my first karate uniform, and that's all I got, too. I got that gi, and that was it. I wore that thing out, and then from there, my first instructor, Todd Myers, who was one of my master instructor, Jose Santamaria students. He taught me for the first year and a half. Then he went off to be a police officer, and then I got a paper route, and I paid for my way through karate that way. I paid my own way through karate, and he paid off for me, I guess. And I trained under Grandmaster Jose Santamaria in Texas, who now lives in Dallas, Texas, originally from Killeen, Texas. And we trained in Taekwondo Muda Kwon. Grandmaster An Mo brought it here from Korea in the 70s. And I'm sure all you old school martial artists from Texas, know Jose Santamaria and know all about An Mo. And I studied Muda Kwon for the first 10 years. And then we switched over to Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee system. And my instructor said when he met Jhoon Rhee and his philosophy and his style, and he just took all the Muda Kwon and just threw it out the door. And, we never looked back. We're so glad we didn't.
That's awesome. I always love getting origin stories in the martial arts on these shows, because especially people with sport karate backgrounds, we come from everywhere. You know what I mean? It's either the typical, I did a 2-week introductory course, or, I love hearing your story of starting at the Boys and Girls Club and taking it from there. So I love getting that perspective. And I know that on Black Belt Magazine, we got a big part of our following that is that Texas old school martial arts following. So showing some love to you guys.
Taekwondo.
Exactly, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about that transition to teaching the Jhoon Rhee system, because you didn't just start teaching the system. You also got to train under Grandmaster Rhee himself some, right? So tell us about those experiences, because I know for a lot of people tuning in, I mean, that sounds wild. People would kill to have that opportunity.
Yes. It was, there definitely was something about him. I was the first, myself and one other student were the first people to test under Grandmaster Jhoon that were from Jose Santamaria's umbrella, so to speak. And he came to the test, and we were the only two people to test. And, I felt like I was in a movie. And, I passed. And there was one part where in my test where we were doing 4-count side kick. I was holding up my side kick. Master Rhee actually stood up from the table, walked around the table, came up to me, and I was holding up my side kick. And he's like, "Oh, I heard a lot of good things about you. And keep up the great job." And I was like, after that, I could have died after that. My life was like fulfilled. But when I met Grandmaster Jhoon, I thought, like most of us, tournaments. Karate's about tournaments and being the best martial artist, and who can beat up who. And at school this week, but when I met Grandmaster Rhee, I was 21 years old, and he was 56, and he's changed my life. He's like, "Oh, purpose of life is happiness," and everybody's like, you'll never hear someone say, "Oh, I'm so tired of being happy." You'll never hear someone say, "Oh, I don't want to be happy anymore." He said so, and he taught us that martial art is a way to find happiness, and how we find it, through knowledge, honesty, and strength. And his philosophy was so powerful. And after that, I had been to the mountain. I went to a seminar in Austin, Texas. It was a 3-day seminar, and Grandmaster Rhee was there, and I was a brown belt, and my mouth hang open the whole time. I just listened to him speak. And, I mean, what a genius. This man was a visionary. He was a genius. He led by example. He was a fantastic martial artist. I mean, I can talk for hours about Grandmaster Jhoon, and very proud to have known him and trained under him. He was no joke. His workouts were tough, but it was just not just his martial arts, but his philosophy. I think that is what the world needs right now, especially right now.
That's awesome. I love that. I love getting those stories of like any of these like iconic grandmasters that we talk about, Jhoon being one of the foremost of them, right? And hearing how important the philosophy was. It wasn't just the training, it was the life skills and everything surrounding that person's mentality that really touched everyone around them, right? So you say you can talk for hours about him. We're all wondering the same thing. There's got to be some stories, right? I've heard that you performed for the president with Jhoon, all kinds of travel, right? Oh, yes. So pick maybe 2, 3. Well, what are some of those stories you could share?
Oh, there's so many. When we went to Korea, we went as part of the USO to perform for American troops during the week of 4th of July. And it was a cultural exchange between Korea and the United States. And we went to Seoul, Korea, and we actually, they gave us a tour of the Kwon, the World Taekwondo headquarters in Korea. And Grandmaster Rhee was there, and the president of the Kwon was there, and all of us Americans were there in the Kwon. And the Korean Tigers demonstration team did a demonstration just for us. And that had never been done before in the history of the Kwon. And we stood there, and of course, we all felt like white belts watching these guys. And it was just unbelievable, the things that they were doing. And I remember one time where I went to go to the restroom, and I'm walking around in the Kwon, and I'm looking for the restroom, and I open this door, and it's a classroom, like a normal classroom, but everybody's in white dobuns. And there's a big, huge chalkboard, and they're writing on the chalkboard, and they're studying Taekwondo. And I'm like, okay. And there was 50 students in there. We're all wearing uniforms, sitting at desks. There's a huge chalkboard, and they're up there studying Taekwondo, footwork for fighting on the chalkboard. So I was like, wow, this is, amazing. And we went to the Emperor's Palace. We, everywhere we went, there was marching bands, white glove salutes. We come in as dignitaries on the buses, and we would perform, and they would perform. We would perform together, and we went all over. I remember one morning, 5 a.m. we leave to go to Gyeongju, and we take it all the way down the Korean Peninsula. We take a 5-hour bus trip, and the whole time Grandmaster Jhoon has us singing Korean folk songs, and he made us learn 2 Korean folk songs to sing at the college when we got there. And one was Toraji, 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 Toraji. That's how many times we did it. I still remember 20 years later. And my daughter Gabrielle was there with us. She was in my wife's stomach at the time, in her tummy. So she actually has been to Korea. And I think my most memorable thing on that trip was it was like we got to a reclining Buddha, and it was the world's largest reclining Buddha. And we get there, and there's this huge parking lot, and we're up in the mountains. There's like, like in the movies, there's like, clouds. We're up in the clouds in the mountains. It's all like cloudy. And it's a big, huge parking lot. We're the only bus there. And everybody goes out, and they go through a gate, and they go to see this reclining Buddha. Now, we have seen many Buddhas already. So my wife was pregnant. She didn't feel too good. So I stayed there with her. And then I was like, man, I want to work out. So I went out in this parking lot, and there's nobody there. And I did every kata I knew in the mountains, in Korea, in the morning mist. And every time I'd finish my kata, Hayasa! There was an old man on the bench. He would go like this. The old man would clap and watch me do my katas. And I did every form I knew. It was like a religious experience. And then, that was probably my most memorable, best memory of that Korea trip. But just to get up every morning and meet Grandmaster Rhee, and he would train us. Okay, everybody, 100 push-ups. Grandmaster Rhee does 100 push-ups in 58 seconds. And then we would work out in the morning. And then working out with Grandmaster Rhee in Korea every morning for like 10 days was just unbelievable.
There's nothing like that. I mean, I keep thinking about, because back when, so I used to do a lot of the Black Belt Magazine social media, and now Gabrielle does it, which, by the way, breaking the fourth wall, Gabrielle's behind the camera. Say hi, Gabrielle. But anyway, so now she takes over a lot of the social media stuff. But that was one thing that often with our like questions of the morning and everything, we would ask, like, if there's any martial arts experience you could have, what would it be, right? And that sounds like something that somebody would dream of as like, this would be my bucket list martial arts experience, is to do Taekwondo in the mountains with Jhoon, right?
Yes,
there's nothing like that. So since this is a sport karate podcast at its core, right, I wanted to ask this question because I think this is interesting. So in my opinion, you are like the epitome of like old school martial arts, like the way it should be, teaching self-defense the right way, empowering children, helping adults, like the whole 9 yards, true what American martial arts schools should be, the true old school, right? And there's a lot of people who are kind of that same archetype who are dynamically opposed to everything sport karate, right? But you, as someone who trained under Jhoon Rhee, you understand martial ballet, which was the birth of musical forms, right? So talk about balancing that, right? Like understanding the old school, the importance of things that are truly applicable, the self-defense, balancing that with also being accepting of the modern, right? The martial ballet that started back in the 70s, all the way through what it is now, where tricking is now more involved and all of that. So just talk about that balance, because that is, a lot of people see that as conflicting worlds, but for you, it's all part of the game, right?
Yeah, it's all part of it, like they say, flash is trash without good basics, and we all know that. But, if you teach the way martial arts are taught in the 60s and 70s, you're going to probably only have males in your school between the ages of 18 and 25. You're not going to have a lot of women. You're not going to have a lot of children, because it was taught in a military type fashion from people that were probably, from the military. And so that's just the way it was, But then when certain things changed, all that, the Karate Kid movie came out. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, when those things came out, children became very interested. But one of the main reasons that children got involved in martial arts was because of Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee's invention of safety gear. When it became safer for children and women to learn martial arts, then those started filling up a little bit. And so, yes, it's good to teach that way, to teach, very hardcore, old style, very traditional way. And I think there's a time and place for that. But right now, if you want to have a successful martial arts school, you have to be able to walk that balance, walk that fine line. I think that if you're just all traditional, hardcore martial arts, you're going to you're only going to help a few people. And that's one of the things that Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee would talk about. We're here to help people. We're not here to chase people away. And back in the old days, as you know, classes were an hour and a half, and they didn't care if you stayed or not. They're like, well, let's see if you deserve to stay here, and we're going to make it as hard as possible. And you're going to have to prove yourself that you want to be here. 50 knuckle push-ups, an hour and a half classes, stand in the horse stance forever, and we all know, okay. And but how many people are you really helping? Are you helping a middle-aged parent? Are you going to be able to help a child with ADHD? And no, you're not, okay. And so there's a fine line. If you have a class to teach that way, then make that separate. In my school, if people that are really into sport karate, then I think you should have a class for those people, because not everybody has what it takes to get up in front of people and perform. Not everybody has what it takes to get up and compete. They just get too nervous. They'll pass out. They'll just drop. Does that make sense? So, it's like what I try to do is I try to, when people become a black belt in the Jhoon system here as taught in the karate and kendo work, then I will start teaching them Muda Kwon the way I was taught in the 70s. And they like that because they're already black belts, you see. But I would not teach white belts that way, no. And then the same thing with competition. You have those people, those overachievers in your school that no matter what you throw at them curriculum-wise or whatever you're teaching in their school, it's just not enough. They need to be pushed. They need to have that goal. They need to have that reason to continue and to improve themselves and take themselves to a new level. And those are your competitors, okay? Those are the rare people that do get involved in the high levels of sport karate, okay? Like you and like my daughter. I mean, they're overachievers and they want to take themselves to that level, or they have just a supportive family that, their mom or dad, sees the value in really being the very, very best that their child can be. And then they will get them involved in sport karate and tournaments. But, as far as tricking goes and what's funny is that a lot of people that put that stuff down, I'm like, well, can you do it? And most of the time they can't do it. And that's why they're putting it down. I'm just being honest with you. Okay. Right. You have to go take some gymnastics, start very young. And if you're into that, okay, fine. But don't put down things just because you can't do it. Okay. The physical ability that it takes to trick, you take someone like that and you teach them an open form, or you teach them, a weapon, you teach them sparring, and they're going to be phenomenal at it. Okay. Because they're an athlete. There's no line about that, But do I think that all martial arts should be taught like that? No. I think that there has to be that practicality. There's a lot of there's just so much to learn and so many styles. 30 years ago, we taught Taekwondo. We're the best. Taekwondo as taught at our school is the best. And you never thought about what if somebody takes you down on the ground. You know what I mean? You only learn a few things on the ground. Now it's like a stable, man. You got to learn how to fight on the ground. You have to learn self-defense. You have to learn weapons defense, and then striking, and so on and so forth. What's funny is that I heard an interview by Joe Louis, the world famous Joe Louis, and one of the things he said is that in Asia, if you're training in karate do and you have a problem with grappling, your karate teacher would say, "Oh, you need to go learn some judo. Go to this guy over here and learn judo." Or if you needed to learn, maybe you had a problem with redirecting. So, go learn Aikido. Go learn from this sensei. They would send you over to this sensei, and it wasn't as secular as it is over here in America. It's like, oh, this is our school, this is the only way, and our way is the best way. I mean, that's the way it was in the 70s, man. You would never even think about going and learning from anybody else. Where now, I think that it's better that you have open-minded instructors that are like, yeah, you know what, train here twice a week, but if you want to go and learn that style, go once a week. Go over there, you know what I mean? This way, that's my suggestion anyway. If you have a sensei and you want to go train another style, tell your sensei, say, I'm still coming here, but I would like, is it okay if I go over here like once a week because I'm interested in this? And if he's a decent enough sensei, he's gonna be like, sure, no problem. It's very respectful. You came and told me that you're gonna go over there and train. Does that make sense? And but not to just forget everything that you taught me. I'm just leaving, and I think that's kind of hurtful. You gotta be very careful because we're human beings and we have feelings too. And we put our heart and blood and soul into somebody, and then they just turn their back on you forever and just leave. For not a really good reason. That's painful for us. It's happened to me a few times. I had my heart broken a few times, as I'm sure all martial artists that have been teaching for 36 years like me have. But getting back to it, yeah, it is a fine line. I think you just got to follow your bliss as a martial arts instructor and follow what you love to teach, whether it's point sparring or continuous sparring or weapons or musical forms. I love teaching katas. I always have. I love katas. I love the Jhoon system. It's beautiful, I never look back. I like teaching the way I teach, and I try to the people that want to go to tournaments. I'll try to steer them towards that. People that are like sparring, I steer them towards that, or whatever the case is. But I think it's a fine line. I just hope that it's still passed on. The traditional values, the traditional way of teaching is still there for people to experience, because especially when they become a higher level martial artist, they like hearing those old school stories about being hit with bamboo sticks and all the blood curdling tales of black belt tests and classes and things that have happened in class, and funny stories, and they want that too. Just like we like it, we like talking about it. Your students want that too, and so you make sure you give that to them, because every time I do that, as a matter of fact, about a month ago, in my black belt class, I FaceTimed my instructor, Jose Santamaria, and I had him watch the class, and oh my God, I thought they were gonna die. They were going crazy. They were working hard tonight, So if Master Santamaria is there, hey, Grandmaster Santamaria, I'm gonna get you back on the camera so you can make my students pass out again.
That's awesome and beautifully said. I think this is the perfect segue to more of like the business side of this show, where we're going to talk about how this karate world got started and everything. But one thing that I want to say here, because I've said this on the show before, but we don't always do kind of business-oriented shows, so this doesn't always come out. What I've noticed, because I've traveled to upwards of 150 schools in my career, teaching seminars, doing things of that nature. And one of the things that I've noticed is that school owners often forget that the student and their family is a customer first, right? It's like if I go to McDonald's, when I'm pulling out of the drive-thru, they're not going to tell me, hey, by the way, don't go to Burger King. Just don't go. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like in a lot of martial arts schools, it is still that mentality of we do it all the right way here. When in reality, if I heard somebody tell me that at McDonald's, where am I having lunch tomorrow? I'm going to go on to Burger King, see what they got. Why are you telling me not to go? Like, I want to go check that out, right? And I think it's a similar culture in martial arts schools, right? Where it's like, create an environment that fosters learning and a love of the martial arts. And if your school doesn't have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and one of your students wants to go learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, let them. Like, it's not your place as the business owner to say you can't do that because they're paying you, right? And I think understanding that dynamic and respecting the student and family as a customer first, right? I think respecting that is really, really important. And I think that it also is where the tie into sport karate comes in. Because I've never said to anybody, because we get a lot of the naysayers of sport karate that say nobody should ever do this, right? I've never said that someone should replace traditional curriculum, which you beautifully spoke about how valuable that is. I've never said replace the traditional curriculum with the sport karate stuff. No. It's a supplement, right? You have the traditional curriculum and you use the sport karate for those students that are interested in it, that want to excel in it, that want to go to the tournaments. Because as you mentioned, that's not every student, right? And you use that to help bolster your curriculum. And I really think that's the way you achieve that balance. But now I want to give you an opportunity to kind of directly talk about the business and the family that you built here at Karate World. So I'll start with the easy question and you kind of take it as far as you want to. But how did this whole thing get started? When did Karate World open its doors?
1991. I was in Texas, and my best buddy at the time, Tony Yu, Grandmaster Tony Yu now, he came here and he opened a school, and with his brother. And while he was at Fort Hood, Texas, which you're going to be going to soon, he would train with my instructor, Grandmaster Jose Santamaria, and he saw that we were rocking over there. We had about 170 active students at that time, and we had just switched over to the Jhoon system. And so he was very interested. He was training with us. And then he came back to Texas a couple of times and hung out with me, and I took him under my wing, and I taught him all the musical forms and also the business system. And he came here, he opened a school. And then about 6 months later, he said, why don't you come up here and help me out and help me get my school rolling? And I was like, okay, I'll come up there for a few months and help you out. And, the rest is history. I came out here and there's like a lot of opportunities and I met some investors and and opened my first school about a year after I came to New Jersey, and never looked back. We had 115 students in 3 months, and I opened a little small place, and we had to expand it 3 times, and then eventually, 1994, we moved about 3 blocks down to this facility, which is at that time was about 5,500 square feet, and I had that for quite a while, for I would say about 27 years until COVID. And then when we had COVID come along, we downsized to this where we're at right now. We're sitting at about
which by the way, this place is huge. Like downsize is relative to how big it was, right?
Yeah.
It's still every bit as successful of a business. But go ahead.
Yes.
I want to make sure you get your flowers.
Oh, thank you. But and so we had to downsize, and we're outgrowing this place right now. So that's a good problem. But I have a lot of people to thank. One of those, of course, is Grandmaster Jose Santa Maria, who taught me everything about how to run a martial arts school. Took me as a young man, and I don't know where I'd be without him. And then of course Tony Yu invited me to come up here, and him and his family were so good to me. Tony Yu, his brother Chris Yu, so good to me and helped me out. I was a young man and just trying to find my way in the world, and opened my dojo, and it was just super successful from day one. And I think it was one of the things that me and Tony Yu were doing. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know dates on things, as far as when things started in the martial art industry. But in 1991, I put on Eye of the Tiger in class, and the theme from Miami Vice, and the Rocky soundtrack in class. And at that time, nobody played music in class. I mean, we had musical forms, but we didn't play music in class. It wasn't allowed. And then I was on my own. So, we put on Eye of the Tiger in our beginner class, and I could just see the reaction. Man, they like music in class, and I don't know. And then I remember for our demo team, I would take strobe lights, tape them onto bow staffs, and put them in Christmas tree stands. We'd put them in Christmas tree stands and stand them around the room during demo and blow smoke, the smoke machine. And then I'd get a red spotlight, and then a blue spotlight, and next thing you know, the whole school's lit up with lights. Now I go online, I see all kinds of karate schools have lights, and all karate schools are playing music. And I thought I invented that. I was like, man, nobody told me to do that. I just did that from trial and error, Hey, they like music. I'll play music, Oh, they like the lights. It's good for demo. Oh, let's put it on. And so now, it's commonplace. But I kind of feel like what Rhee felt back in 1970 when he invented the first musical form. People are saying, what's he doing? He's trying to change everything. He's prostituting the martial arts. And now, but like I said, when I went to Korea 20 years ago, they were doing Taekwondo to music all over Korea. See, in Korea. So what was Master Rhee? He was a visionary. He He saw the future. It's like when he invented gear. He saw the future. And, I know that Bruce Lee did a lot for martial art, and so did Chuck Norris. But Grandmaster Jhoon is right up there with those two guys. I think those three are the main 3 guys that did the most for martial arts in America. Chuck Norris. Let's be real. After Bruce Lee died, there was a bunch of chop socky flicks and Bruce Live, Bruce L.E., and every other type of Bruce Lee imitator, and the movies were terrible. And that lasted for not very long. And then the only way you would ever see martial arts on the big screen was you had to go see a Chuck Norris movie. And I was a teenager at that time, and I also went and saw Good Guys Wear Black, A Force of One, The Octagon, and those movies. And it was Chuck Norris. He was the guy that you went and saw. He's a high quality too. And that's one thing I try to teach my students. I see a lot of people that in sport karate, they have these super big egos, and you can't tell them right from wrong, and they're just so cocky and full of themselves. But the real champions are the most humble martial artists that you'll ever meet. The friendliest. They don't have a chip on their shoulder. They don't have to prove themselves to anybody. Chuck Norris is one of those guys. I've met him several times. Super friendly, super nice, very down to earth. And I'm sure all the martial artists will agree with me. The better the martial artists are, the less ego they have. And the ones that have a bunch of ego, there's maybe it's not really there. Maybe their skills aren't where they would like them to be. I don't know. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, beautiful. And thank you for sharing that story. And, since I mentioned at the top of the show, Gabrielle and I did come up to go to a New York Jets game. I am a lifelong, diehard New York Jets fan. I consider myself a bandwagon fan from the 60s. I'm a Jets fan because of my grandfather, who watched Joe Namath win Super Bowl III, by the way. So I'm a Jets fan, diehard, have been my whole life, right? But I'm going to fangirl about this a little bit. You actually had the opportunity right here in your school to have Rex Ryan, the greatest New York Jets head coach of my lifetime, in the school training. So tell us about how cool that was to, see him and his family walk in the door. And I think you said he hit the bag pretty hard, right?
He did hit the bag hard. He worked hard. And it was him, his wife, his son, and his defensive coordinator. One of my third-degree black belts, Jesse Monjovi, shout out, was a waitress at his favorite diner in New Jersey. And she got to talking to him about the school. And so they came in and they took a free class. We were teaching Muay Thai, the Muay Thai's martial arts system, and they loved it. And they came and signed up, and everybody was like, "Holy hell, there's Rex Ryan!" And he's hitting the bag good. He was bam, bam. I mean, he would rock the bag helmet, and he worked hard. He sweated. He worked hard, and he made his orange belt, I believe, and he broke the elbow strike, and man, they were pumped up after that. And then I think they moved. I think they moved.
Yeah, the Jets messed up and moved on, which
yeah.
Worst decision by the Jets of my lifetime also is when Rex Ryan was no longer the head coach. And then we had to deal with who was that terrible head coach we had to deal with for a couple of years? Oh, my God. The guy with the crazy eyes. He coached the Dolphins, too. Adam Gase. No, Adam Gase, if you happen to watch my show, which you don't. But no disrespect. But I wish we still had Rex Ryan. This is not a football show. This is a sport karate show. So obviously that was like a big name that came in here and trained.
Yeah.
But within the martial arts world, you've trained several world champions. Jessica Mellon, one of them that a lot of the old school NASKA fans will know about. And then, of course, your own children, right? Gabrielle and Jared, both sport karate world champions. So first, I'm going to let you brag on them in a minute. But first, talk a little bit about what it is that you teach in the school that you feel like kind of gave some of those guys the ability to become sport karate world champions. Was it just doing Jhoon Rhee musical forms? And like, what do you attribute some of that to kind of prepare for sport karate success?
Well, I think that in your school, you have to have an avenue for the students to perform. That means you have to have an incredible demo team, and you have to have a graduation every single month that is meant to blow the socks off all of your students. So they come in here, they get motivated, and they want to be in the spotlight. They want to get in front of their family and friends, and they want to perform. And those belt exams have to be a show, and that's what we try to do. We make the graduation a show that they look forward to, that do not want to miss, and they want to be in that spotlight. And when you look around this room, you have 4 walls, and it's air. That's all it is. So it's up to you to make it what it is as the sensei, as the instructor. So it's whatever you make it. So if you make it something that they want to do and they want to aspire to, if you can motivate them, and you study motivation, you listen to Anthony Robbins and Zig Ziglar and Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee and Bruce Lee and Dave Kovar, who's like the instructor of instructors. If you don't know who he is, come on, okay? You're missing the boat.
Anybody on the black belt page better know who Dave Kovar is.
Exactly. Okay, that's like this guy. I try to pattern a lot of what I've done here over that guy, because let me tell you, when he talks, I zip my mouth and I listen to him. Okay, and take what he says to do, and take all this philosophy from these great people and put it into your classroom, because we're here to motivate people. We're not here to just keep punching and kicking. But if that's what you want to teach, okay. But Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee was all about, how can we take this and turn these physical qualities into human qualities, and to make martial arts impact them to their regular life. And so, when people are properly motivated, then they're going to push themselves. They're going to want to become a world champion. They're going to want to stand out. They're going to want to be great. So it's what you make it, man. So, if you have 4 walls of air, then it's up to you. And so you got to make it something. You have to make it something. You have to make it something that they, that they aspire to do. They want to be. They want to find greatness. They want to find, they want to be phenomenal, right? Then You get those phenomenal people, you put them up in front of people, you put them on the spotlight, and then everybody's going to rise to the occasion. Everybody's going to rise up to that, and so it's up to you. If you want to produce high-quality students, then you better be able to motivate people, because this is not an easy thing. You're doing the splits. You're getting hit. You're getting sore. You're doing push-ups. You're doing sit-ups. You're sweating. You're exerting yourself. I heard someone talk about the adjectives in martial arts. It's rewarding. It's transformational, right? It's life-changing. See that? It builds confidence. It makes you physically fit. But there's a lot of other adjectives that we don't talk about. It's painful. It's scary at times, right? You get sore, okay? You get injured, okay? So you won't talk about those things, okay? So it's not an easy thing. So you have to have high levels of motivation. You better have a book of motivational quotes this thick, so you can keep talking to those people and feeding them, especially at the end of class when they're tired and you tore them down, then you build them up. And you make them feel good about what they just accomplished. And if you do that, they'll be back for the next class. They don't care how hard you push them. If it makes them feel good about themselves and builds their self-esteem, they'll be back for more of that. And you can take that one to the bank.
And I'd be motivated, man. I love that. That's awesome. So now, and I think that's a great overview of kind of how it sets the stage to create great competitors, right? But now I want you to brag, right? We'll start with the oldest. We'll start with Jared, right? So with your kids, both becoming sport karate world champions, both becoming great instructors as well. Jared's teaching. Gabrielle's got a lot of private students, right? But let's start with Jared. What was it that, and I remember we were talking over dinner, 15 was when, you realized, man, this kid's good. Something changed at 15, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us about it. What made Jared special as a martial artist? Obviously, as a son, that's a different story. As a martial artist, what made him special?
Well, I think that Jared had a lot of good role models here at the school, and there was a lot. It's a lot of pressure on him because his dad's the sensei, right? So for him to, because most kids of karate teachers, that from my experience, they don't do martial arts. Okay, I know of 3 right now. I can tell you that their kids, as soon as they made their black belt, they quit. And they just didn't want to do it anymore because I think there's too much pressure on them to be at a certain level because of who their dad is or who their mom is. And my son, he took all that on his shoulders, and it was hard on him in the beginning. You know what I mean? Because he had to work. He was a worker. He had to work for everything. But when he turned 15, man, I don't know what happened. The light switch clicked, and he just transformed. And he's kicking it back harder than me. And I'm like, good Lord. And I say, Jared, jump, spin, and do this. Okay, jump and do that. Anything he can do. Flying sidekick. You name it. And just transformed him. And it's because he was raised in the dojo. When he was 1 year old, his wife, my ex-wife Roxanne, we used to have him bouncing in the baby bouncer in the doorway right over there. When he was 1. Same thing with this one over here, Gabrielle. Same thing. And he's raised in the dojo. And that's one of the things that, I think that I always try to tell all my parents and my students, you know what? Let the dojo raise your kids. Let them be raised in the dojo because there's really nothing out there for them. Especially, you raise them up from they're little. When they become teenagers, hopefully by that time, their identity is they're a martial artist. They're not going to be tempted to drink and smoke and get in gangs and take drugs and all of those things because they know who they are. They know who they are, and they're not tempted by those things. And especially when we have teenagers in here, my graduates, I say, these young people are in here. They're trying to develop themselves through martial arts. They could be out on the street corner right now, getting in trouble, doing the wrong things, hanging around the wrong crowd. It's funny. One of the things that Grandmaster Jhoon used to say is this. He would be like, let me ask you a question. When someone drinks alcohol for the first time, do they go, that's good. Can I have some more? No. He said, what about the first time someone smokes a cigarette? Do they go, ooh, that's good. Can I have some more? And everybody's going, no, they don't say that. They cough. They turn green. And so Grandmaster Jhoon would say, so why are they doing things that they really don't want to do? He said, because their friends are making them do it. Their friends are making them do it. And wow, that's so powerful. It's so true, isn't it? And so when you explain that way to people, they're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, people don't, just drink. Oh, that's good. Give me some more. Or I like that cigarette. No, they don't. They really don't. They're doing it because they're trying to fit in. They don't know who they are yet. They're trying to find themselves. So let martial arts, let them find themselves in that way. Let them find themselves as a martial artist. They'll be less tempted to get involved in all that kind of stuff.
I love it. I love it. We need to like clip parts of this podcast and make those little like quote posters and throw them up on the wall. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So there was a good overview of Jared, and then kind of segue into some motivation. But now let's bring it back. I want more bragging, and now we're gonna go. I'm biased to this one too, so I bring her name up on the show all the time. But now I'm gonna let you do the bragging for me. So let's talk about Gabrielle.
Well, Gabrielle is a performer. Since she was a little child, she was a performer. She can sing, she can dance. She picks up things quickly. She's more like me that way. She picks up things pretty quick, physically anyway. And so as far as martial artist goes, I mean, everybody's seen her perform. They've seen her. I think that some people will look at someone like that and say, "Oh, look, it's Barbie. Barbie packs a punch. Barbie can pack a kick." And, don't let her fool you. Don't let those looks fool you, and that's a good thing. And, I'm so glad that she stuck with her martial arts. Both of my kids made me so proud. They're both world champions, and they're both like phenomenal martial artists. And, when they were young, I told them, I said, listen, you're going to do two things. Number one, you're going to do good in school. And number two, you're going to do martial arts. If you do those two things, I'll give you anything you want. I'll buy you anything you want. Anything you want, but you're going to go do good in school and you're going to do martial arts, okay? And I think that was being a pretty good dad, right? But as far as, both of my kids are this way, and Gabrielle's definitely this way, is that, when she gets her mind on something, she's not going to stop. And when she gets her mind made up, she's going to do it. And, man, she does it, she's going to do it. And that means, eating clean, doing her ab work, doing her weight training, doing her cross training, doing her running, working on her katas, doing her private lessons, and then on top of all that, working 2 jobs and going to school. Now, I have people that I know that go to college and they're like, "Oh, I can't work. I go to school." Or they maybe they work here at the karate school, and then "Oh, I'm going to college, so I'm not going to work there no more." Well, I don't know. Is that just this generation? I don't know. My daughter, she works 2 jobs and goes to college, gets on the dean's list, and is a world champion martial artist. So, I think the saying is true. He who is afraid to do too much often does too little. And I think a lot of people are afraid to bite off too much like that. But my daughter's definitely not that way. I mean, she's an overachiever, and very proud of her martial arts. I can just I'm in awe. I'm like, wow, did I make that? I don't know. Did I? I did a good job, man. I don't know. I think the good genes must have passed me over and went right to her and my son. I can't be more proud than I am. And not just, that they're good athletes and good martial artists. They're just good people. We really turned out some really good-hearted, really good people. I don't think I've ever heard my son say a mean word about anybody. Ever. He doesn't get mad at people. He's very, very, very in control of himself at all times. And but my daughter's a brat. Just kidding. I'm super proud of both of these guys. And so a lot of you don't know me because I run my school 24/7. I teach mostly all my classes here, so you don't really see me at tournaments and stuff. I do happen to see them online. But if you ever see me out at a tournament, I'm Gabrielle Dunn's father and Jared Dunn's father. So come and say hi, okay?
I love it. That was the perfect amount of bragging. That's exactly
yeah, not too much.
That was awesome. And so I want to get to, you talk about creating good people. And I think that one thing that kind of gets back to those principles is when Gabrielle and I arrived in New Jersey today, the first thing that we did is we came in. Karate World was doing a demonstration over at a local youth center as part of an anti-bullying rally, right? So I have another question about that that's a little bit more fun. But first, just talk about the importance of that community outreach for your martial arts school and trying to show other kids and parents of those kids who aren't involved in the martial arts what it can do for them. Talk about that just from the standpoint of your personal mission to help the community through this martial arts school.
Well, I think, we have an obligation to put a good face on martial arts because it's done so much for us and it does so much for people. Like I said, it's transformational. It changes people's lives. But if we just stay in our school and just worry about our school, running our school, then we're really not impacting the community as much as we maybe could. Now, of course, we do things like Toys for Tots and food drives for the homeless at Thanksgiving. But anytime you get a chance, to do a demonstration for a DARE program or an anti-bullying rally like we did today, or just to put a good face on your school, get out there and do it. Did I go out there to sign up some people? Maybe some people will sign up, maybe not. But that's not what it's about. It's about putting a good face on martial arts, and putting a good face on your school and giving the message. Let me tell you, there's not a lot of places now where you can go where people say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, and no ma'am. And like in the Jhoon system, we praise this great nation, and we talk about how the United States is the greatest country in human history, that we did change the world. And this is all from Grandmaster Jhoon. Grandmaster Jhoon came here. He lived in a foxhole for 3 months in South Korea before Americans came and liberated him. And then now he was telling me when I was in Korea, the most modern cities, man, we saw beautiful lit up cities. I mean, it was just like amazing. And Master Jhoon told me on the bus, he's like, when I lived here, people lived in mud huts with dirt floors. He said, when I lived here. And now in 50 years, this is what America's freedom system has done for South Korea. And, North Korea, millions of people starving over there. It's terrible, what's going on. I'm sure everybody's heard stories of what's going on in North Korea right now. And so, don't take lightly what America's done for the world. Okay, don't take it lightly. Okay, we're the world's police. When there's a problem, we're there. When there's a disaster overseas, a hurricane, national disaster, guess what? Who's there? We are. We're the most generous nation in the world. And so, if you want to badmouth your country, right, and we're not perfect, don't get me wrong, but I'm not the guy to be around with that. Okay, I came here to New Jersey from Texas. I had a $50 bill in my pocket, and I had a black belt in my suitcase and a blue uniform. I came here with $50, people, from Texas, and I worked hard. I believed in myself, and I was able to make my dream come true. In this country, if you work hard, you believe in yourself, you will be a success, and that's not true in other nations. You can work hard your whole life and never achieve your financial freedom. So, like Grandmaster Rhee says, radio, light bulb, telephone, automobile, airplane, computer, you name it, it was created here. We changed this world, okay, in around 200 years. Master Rhee told me, he said, the world was unchanged for thousands of years. Everybody rode on horseback and used oil lamps to see at night. For thousands of years, it was pretty much the same. If you look back, he's right. Look at the old photos and the old drawings. Yep, there's a horse and buggy. Okay, 100, 200 years later, there's another horse and buggy. There's another candlelight. And now they're using candles. Now they're using torches. What happened? And Master Rhee is like, because for the first time in human history, people could chase their dreams. And they didn't have people holding them down. No, you can't do this, and controlling people through fear. And because of our freedom system, people would chase their dreams. Our whole freedom system, people could elevate themselves to a higher standard by creating a light bulb or creating an automobile. So there was a reason for people to invent these things. The air conditioner. Where would we be without an air conditioner, man? You know what I mean? Invented in America. The air conditioner. Can you imagine? It's hot outside. You open the windows. You hope a breeze comes. That's how people lived. They didn't understand. And so here at Karate World Kenilworth, we'll always use Grandmaster Jhoon's philosophy, because we believe in it. And I remember when Master Jhoon was here one time, we had about half of our students were adults, half kids, half adults. And Master Rhee was like, "Oh, you're proof that my philosophy works." He said, "Nobody knows my philosophy better than Jeff Dunn." And that was the best compliment he ever paid me. And he said, because you're proof my philosophy works because you have so many adults in your schools training. It's true. Adults, I don't know about you, but I like to be motivated. Oh, yeah. And I like to train under a martial artist that is going to motivate me. Like people like that I train under, like Grandmaster Jhoon, Jose Santamaria, Dave Kovar, Chris Yu, these people, I would train with them, and they, at the end of their lesson, your drenched with sweat, you had a great workout, and then they talk about what you did.
Yeah.
They talk about what you did and what you stand for and what this does and how it's changing you and all of these things, man. You just I'm getting goosebumps right now, thinking about those things, that's what, if you're a martial artist and you're not doing those things, you're missing the boat, man. As an instructor, you got to motivate people. That's what we're here to do. We're here to change lives of people. And, if you just worry about that, worry about changing lives, worry about impacting people, worry about helping everybody that walks in your dojo, you won't have to worry about the financial part. I don't even talk about finances with my students. I have office personnel do that. I don't like to talk about money with my students. I talk about martial arts and improving yourself and working on this, training and getting to class, and all that will come.
You've got me ready to run through a wall once again. I love it. And it was patriotic, man. This is awesome. I love it. I love it. And, another thing, so we were talking about doing the demo today, right? And I was crossing my fingers and hoping, because I've seen videos of it. I haven't gotten to see it live. But this guy has a demo that he will do where you will take a stack of wooden boards, you'll set the whole thing on fire, and then you'll break it, right? So I got to ask before we get to the end of the show here. Number one, how do you come up with it? How do you get the idea to set boards on fire and then break them? And then number two, is there a secret, or you just hit the boards and hope it don't hurt too much?
Well, stay away from the fire. Number one, okay, all right? And whatever you do, don't lean over the fire and punch down like this because you might burn your face off, okay? I heard about some guy doing that locally over here. I don't know. He put a couple of boards and alcohol, and he leaned over the fire and punched it, and the fire came up and burnt his face off. Oh, no. Somebody I knew. And it's terrible. But no, just you stay away from it. You break it, get away from it, and make sure it's fast. And get that hand out quick. And don't put too much alcohol. You're gonna catch your hand on fire.
That's awesome. And I think there's video on your Facebook page, and people go and find it. So go to Jeff Dunn. Go find it on Facebook. You can see all the content, and eventually I'll see it. I'll see it live and in person.
Yeah.
But this has been a fantastic episode. So much motivation all through here. Sport karate, martial arts business owning, just traditional martial arts in general. So much good stuff. So as I always say at the end of shows, if you guys are just tuning in, make sure when we finish this, you rewind it, you watch it back through, because there's gems all throughout this thing. Any closing comments or thoughts you want to share?
One thing, I'm very, very pleased and very, very happy for my daughter finding such a great young man and a great son-in-law. And I want you to know something. This is a good man right here. You know how I know he's a good man? Because he got her. He got to have her as his wife. And anybody who gets to have a precious gem like that knows he deserves it. Okay, he's a good man, and he's a great role model for all martial artists. Like I said today at the demonstration, he came and performed, and this guy really revolutionized the bow in competition across the United States. And I'm happy and very pleased and proud to call my son.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you for everything.
So, guys, what an episode, right? Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you again, Master Dunn, for your time. This has been fantastic. This has been episode 114 of the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. I'm Jackson Rudolph, and we'll see you next time.